Sherry Sokolowski here from SLS Event Planning, and I'm super excited about today's guest, Sheila FG. I will let her introduce her last name because I've known Sheila for, gosh, I want to say maybe close to 15 years now, and I can never say her last name right, but I will say that Sheila and I have known each other for a long time, and her and I, we call upon each other every once in a while because Sheila's expertise is something that is rare in the event industry, and that is sponsorships and vendors. And she's been working in that industry for a very long time. And I kind of lean on her as someone who, if I've got clients coming to me and they're saying, Sherry, do you know someone who can help me get sponsored? I'm like, yeah, Sheila is your person. You need to reach out to her because she knows that industry. She knows how to serve the sponsor. She knows how to serve the clients, and she knows how to connect those two relationships together in such a way that makes it a success for everyone involved. And a little bit of our conversation today is going to be really about not just sponsorships in regards to live events venue setting that we're all have been used to, but what are we doing now, since events are kind of shifting in a direction where a lot of people are doing virtual, and there's going to be a different kind of outlook on what live events are going to look like now that things are starting to open back up. You know, what does events look like post COVID-19, especially in regards to sponsorships? Because that's kind of been the struggle, really, where all of us have been in virtual events, is how can we maintain that sponsor relationship to give them the value, because some of us that are watching this realize that with live events, you could charge tens of thousands of dollars for sponsorships in a live setting because you've had tens of thousands of people there for them to be in front of. Well, how does that look now? What is that expectation going to be on the sponsors end and the promoters end? And that's going to be a little bit of what we talk about today with Sheila. So Sheila, welcome. I'm so thrilled that you were able to spend some time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. This is awesome. I'm really glad that you're doing this for people because, there's a lot of information that's needed out there. So this is great that you're putting this series together.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about, well, first off, tell us, how do you say your name properly? And a little bit about your background so that they know kind of where your expertise comes from in the sponsorship field.
Absolutely. So my name is Sheila Farraher Gemma. The Farraher is mine, and I picked up the Gemma from my husband, and he actually took my name as well, which is kind of funny. But yeah, pretty much everyone mispronounces it, so not a big deal. It doesn't bother me. But I've always, I've been in business for, gosh, probably about 20, 25 years now, and I've always kind of been the person who took care of the strategic side of the business. So I can't even speak, strategic partnerships,
Yeah.
joint ventures, that kind of stuff. And it kind of led its way into sponsorship. And one or two of the businesses I had, I started to kind of dabble in bringing sponsors into our own events. And then a business partner I had at the time ended up going working, we both know her, ended up going working for a big digital marketing agency and needed help with sponsors. So I said, oh, I'll just jump on board and help her out with that. And people started to see what I was doing. So kind of a business was launched that was never really planned. But I've loved it. It's been just a ton of fun. So, yeah.
It's funny that you say that because right now, a lot of people are probably experiencing that themselves, right? If they're trying to to survive and thrive through COVID-19 crisis, where a lot of businesses have been forced to shut down, they're kind of pivoting, is the word a lot of people are saying right now, in a direction of, I'm not able to serve my community this way because it's kind of been placed on hold, just kind of like myself. I mean, I'm a strategic event planner for live events. So, what does that look like for me? Well, I'm kind of pivoting and working more towards just like you said, the strategic planning part of what clients should be doing in their business to stay really, truly out in front of their tribe and their people. So you doing what you have done for years, for decades in a strategic portion, all of a sudden what you did well and what you kind of shine in, all of a sudden came an opportunity for you to do sponsorships and create a business doing that. And it's kind of funny how sometimes that works out. You know,
Yeah.
I had that kind of same story when I worked for Bill Glazer all those years. That's how we met, you know, back at GKC
Exactly.
days.
Yeah.
You were doing sponsorships and we're a sponsor, you know, at our GKC events, and that's how kind we knew. We met with your partner Deanna, and it was fun times back then. And I just naturally, once GKSC started falling apart, you know, I was like, what am I going to do? So, you know, lots of prayer and support from my husband. We're like, well, you shine in event planning. You got relationships like you've got relationships with sponsors and such. So let's try that. So, you know, I'm glad you shared that with me because I didn't really know that's really how you fell into this. That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it certainly wasn't something that was planned. You know, I didn't sit down one day and say, let's write a business plan for, being a sponsor broker. I don't even really have a title, I guess. But it just happened, and it's continued to grow, and it's definitely very interesting. And then I get to work with great people like you and all the other event planners out there, because I end up being like the event planner partner,
Yeah.
because like as you've seen in some events we've done together, Sherry, you're doing the event side of it, I'm doing the sponsor side of it, but it all has to kind of mesh together so that it's a good experience for everyone.
It does. It does. And that's another good point too, that kind of brings up a question for me is really a statement first and then a question back to you is that's what I love, you know, being a solar event planner like myself, is the partnerships. You know, I can do, like, people will call me up all the time and say, Sherry, can you help me out with sponsors? And I'm like, well, my expertise in the sponsorship field is the concierge part, helping them once they've come on board, because that's where a lot of people fall short as promoters. They fail to really, you know, continue that relationship building once they're brought on board. And things like, you know, because I saw this happening at a lot of events when I left GKIC, because we did it so well at GKIC. It's like, well, wait a minute, the sponsors need to know the agenda. They need to know when they're going to be getting traffic. They need to know how to ship stuff to the hotel, you know, all of these things that need to happen. And so that's kind of where I like to help out my clients. But
Right.
bringing them on, I always explain to them that it's either best to have an expert like yourself who knows the right questions to ask the promoter and the sponsors. Because, you know, the question back to you is, what do you feel is the most important top three things you would say that a promoter who's doing an event, whether it's virtual or live, and we'll talk about the differences here in a moment, when they need to start looking for sponsors? Because I would love to hear your side of it to see if it's any different than what I tell them.
Right. And I suspect we're probably going to be very similar, but to me, it's a partnership, it's not a check.
Right.
So when you're bringing sponsors on, you really need to kind of think out like what's going to be in it for them. How can you support them? How can you make sure that this is like such an amazing event for them that it's just like a no-brainer? They're going to be back year after year after year. So you really kind of got to think about what it is that you're doing at your event, how the sponsor is going to fit into that.
Right.
If they're a good fit or not. They may not be. There's some sponsors that just aren't going to be a good fit for your particular type of event.
Hmm.
So you need to just kind of really look at that and curate like the best possible experience for your attendees, which means that they have in the sponsors that are in the sponsor hall or wherever they are, that they have what they need to grow their business and become better at what they're there to learn to start with. And
Right.
then that the sponsors are just like an integral part of that. It's not just somebody who cut a check and now has a table to stand at and you pretty much ignore them for the rest of the time. So it's just, really creating that symbiotic relationship so that it's everyone's winning and it just becomes super easy then.
Exactly. And I do definitely agree with you on all of that. I can actually give you an example of one of my clients that I've been working with now for about a year and a half. They've been doing events successfully for 6 years, and they have, and it was interesting because when I first started going to their events and managing them for them, and I would sit back and I'm like, wait a minute, these were the same sponsors that were at their event 13 weeks ago, because they have events every 13 weeks, so 4 times a year. And I thought to myself, why would what benefit is it for those sponsors to come? Because I was looking at it in a different light of other events that I've done, right? So every event is different. And the way that they treat their relationships with their sponsors is, like you just said, a partnership. And he even talked about this on, because they're doing virtual right now because they can't do live. And he even talked about this on the virtual. He said, look, I'm not a service company. That's not what you hire me for. You hire me to be a coach to help you implement marketing within your business. The service part of what I teach you is held and connected through my partnerships with my sponsors. So he talks about that. And what happens is like you said, he brings the sponsors in. Of course, they do, I don't know what their relationship is. I don't know if there's revenue share or what have you, or what fees they pay. That's between those two. But they bring in that partnership that he is in, number one, endorsing,
Mhm.
right? I know these sponsors are doing their job the best way that they can for the needs that I know my clients have. Like you said, the best experience for your attendees, what it is that they need from these sponsors to help them grow, excuse me, to grow their businesses. And he's like, I know these guys. They can help you with that. So they bring them in and they just showcase them. And that's the partnership. And what that does, and those of you listening to this, what that does for you is it builds your partnerships with other companies that can do things for you that you don't know how to do yourself, but you know your clients need. That's actually a two-part. Also, it will allow you to focus mostly on what you know you want to bring in services through yourself and through others. And it opens your eyes to looking at sponsorships in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if I could
right?
add a fourth thing as well, it also helps your attendees to grow, and because you're giving them all the resources that they need that you can't
Right.
provide for them. So it's all right there for them.
Yes. And if you set it up to where they're back again and again, you can work with the sponsors to say, hey, look, use this opportunity to meet with not only new clients, because they're always bringing in new potential attendees at every event, but your existing clients that, oh, now they have an opportunity to be in front of you face to face. Let's sit down and talk about what else I could be doing with you, or maybe a particular concern that you have of something that's been happening, but it's been hard to talk about over the phone, or you've just been both too busy or what have you. So it's like looking at sponsors in a different way. So those of you listening to this, if you have an event, whether it's virtual or honestly, I don't even want to say the word event. If you have a business
Hmm.
where you know that your clients, in other words, could be utilized and grow with you through other services that you can't offer, look for those partners and bring them in as a sponsor to your business. So Sheila, let's take that next step, that next natural step of this conversation of what is the best way to go about reaching out to these potential partners as a sponsor,
So the kind of the small step even before that is to figure out who they are. So if
right?
it's very easy if I'm sorry, there's a lot of street noise going on at the moment. I hope you don't hear this, but
Nope,
it's
I don't.
very easy. It's very easy if you're teaching the thing that you do. So if you are like a real estate guru and you're teaching real estate, or you're a marketing guru and you're teaching marketing, just look at your checkbook. Who are you cutting checks to? Whose
Mhm.
software are you using? What is it that you're doing? That where are you basically spending your money, because those are probably going to help your students as well. And then just look at, so if you have kind of a software company, what are other good software companies maybe to bring in as well, or maybe you just want to keep it exclusive to the one that you use. So like, think of the students' journeys. What is it that are the attendees' journey? What is it are they going to need as they go through and try and do the thing that you're teaching them to do, or use the information that you're giving them. And if you do that and kind of mind map it out, you'll probably come up with a whole bunch of either companies that or types of company that you think would be good, and then you just kind of research that out. And you know um, basically what the sponsor is buying by buying into your event is they're buying access to your people. So that's what you have for sale. So it's not a booth, it's not a banner here and this and that and the other. It's like you're going to have access to 200, 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever, real estate investors or chiropractors or whatever the person is. And this is what they need, this is what they do, this is and you can go real deep as well. Like these are my people, I know them. This is how you communicate with them. They don't want like this big long-winded email. They want three bullets, or they want the big long-winded email because they want to read through it all, and just really kind of set your sponsor up for success. It's almost like you're going to coach them,
Right.
to talk to your people the way that you know that they want to be talked to, because they're coming in blind. They're just coming into like 300 attendees or whatever the number is, and
Right.
they don't really know what that is or what that means. So like the more you can do on the front end, kind of get them ready for that, the better you're going to be as well. Like, is this offer going to be better than this offer? If we're at the trade show and we offer this for people who sign up, or this for people who sign up, which you think is going to, have more traction, that kind of stuff as well. So just like really thinking deep about it. It's not just a matter of pulling in a sponsor, like I said, and getting a check that pays for your event. And you're like, okay, great. Who was that
Right.
guy again? I forget his name. It's like you really want to do a little more than that.
Well, exactly, because you're, like you said, you're setting them up for success. I mean, most of what these sponsors do throughout the year, it is look for other opportunities to sponsor, events. So,
Right.
you know,
Yep.
they're they're not familiar with who you are. They probably are familiar with you enough as far as what they can find out on Google, right, or on your
Exactly.
website.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't tell, like you said, that doesn't tell them how your own followers understand things and how they receive things, how
That's
they
it.
convert, what is it that gets them to say yes. So that's great information, right? That was a really big golden nugget, Sheila. I'm
Yeah. Thank
thankful
you.
that you brought that up.
Yeah, you just kind of got to think of things from a different point of view. It can't be your point of view. It's like the person coming in. How can you really, give them the best experience that they're going to get, and really build value in that sponsorship. And then going back to your client that has the events every 13 weeks. I mean, his sponsors are coming back, possibly seeing the same people because they're just continuing to build those relationships.
Right.
They're still getting business out of it. I'm sure every 13 weeks there are some people in the room that are new compared to the last set.
Hmm.
So it becomes a no-brainer, and it becomes a very easy way to do business and gather leads.
It is. And it's one of those things where, sponsors also, if you're doing this kind of relationship building with them, where you're preparing them beforehand as to how your attendees are going to receive them, like you said, some may just give me the gold nuggets, give
Right.
me the bullet
Yep.
points. I don't want that kind of offer for my clients because I don't think that's going to go over well. So let's talk about something else. Because almost every single business has multiple things within their umbrella of service, right? So just because, let's use a fulfillment house, for example, just
Mhm.
because it's
Yep.
a fulfillment house, doesn't necessarily mean that's they just focus on little tchotchkes that could be sent out. They could also be looked at, well, let's have a conversation with this fulfillment house. What other things within your ballpark are you good at? How else could we work together that would really make the most sense to my attendees? And by having that kind of conversation with them also opens up the door for you to have more than just one kind of fulfillment house at your as a sponsor, right? Because
Exactly.
you and
Exactly.
I have
Yep.
crossed paths at so many big events over the years
Yep.
where I'm looking and I'm like, wow, there's so many of the same kind of vendor here. How do you choose? But if you were the promoter and you work with them and say, what is your specialty? What's going to
Yes.
set you
Yeah.
apart from just teaching, like you said, coaching, just like they do with
Yeah.
their own attendees? What is it that you do that can set you apart from all the other fulfillment houses so that we can focus that within the marketing of getting people to come see you? So I think
Exactly.
that's, that is just, I don't know if you guys heard that. If not, you need to go back, rewind, and listen to what Sheila just talked about, because I think that is what is highly, highly missed, because they're all, a lot of times what promoters do, and I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong, but they'll hire someone on a commission base to go after sponsors, and they'll say, look, just get me a sponsor that makes sense. This is the kind of services that my clients are looking for, so go out and get me those. And then they'll, because they don't have the time to deal with it, so they'll hire someone and they'll go out and they'll look for those. But what that person is doing is they're just looking for that service that you asked them to look for. They're not helping them through the process most of the time. They don't, that person working on commission doesn't necessarily know your attendees like you know them. So if you're that kind of promoter where you're looking for someone to hire, I want Sheila to talk a little bit about this too. Don't just, look at this as making sure the sponsors need to know, but who is it that's going to go after the sponsors for you? You need to make sure they need to know this too, right? So Sheila,
Right.
talk a little bit about that because that's what you do for a lot of people, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So it's you want someone that isn't just selling kind of like a product that's, box A.
Yeah.
That's again, you want somebody who can kind of think about it, who can think on their feet and figure out ways that are going to work. So they're more creative in how they think. So it's a lot of conversations. Like when I bring on a promoter, it's a long conversation in the beginning. It's like, asking a lot of questions that sometimes they don't have the answer to yet. It's,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that they're looking to get out of this? What do they use themselves? What is best for their students? And because we don't just want to have bodies there in booths. It's just not going to do it.
Right.
So to really kind of focus in on that again, just spend a little bit more time with it. And like I say, you can do all this work up front, and then it's just going to repeat itself over and over again. It's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times at events, towards the end of the event, I'll sell into the next year's event or the next, 13-week event or wherever it is.
Right.
And it's a total no-brainer. People are just like, yeah, we just had a great time here. We were treated well. We were respected. It's a total no-brainer, and it becomes part of their business year in, year out as well. So just kind of putting a little bit of thought behind it and figuring out who it is that you want there, who your partners are going to be, and then just like over deliver on what you're giving them as well, so that they're just like blown away by the whole thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think too that just like anything, you have to treat sponsorships as part of your business. It's not
Hmm.
just something that you're going to add to try and gain more revenue. Yes,
Yes,
it
yeah,
is something
yeah,
else that you can add to gain more revenue. But like you said, Sheila, in order for that partnership to work time and time again, so that they want to come back to the next one because of everything you just said and then some, you have to put a little bit of effort into that partnership and make sure it's a win-win all the way around. When I first started SLS over 8 years ago, I dabbed a little bit into trying to be that sponsor, concierge type of service.
yep,
And I reached out to all the sponsors over the years that I knew and worked with GKSC. Now I didn't do the sponsorships at GKSC, other people within did. All I did was help with the relationships on site to make sure that they were good. Like you remember
yeah,
I would walk around and say,
yeah,
"Hey Sheila, hey Deanna, how you guys doing? Need anything? You good?"
yeah,
That's just what I like to do. So looking at it from a logistics standpoint, I wanted to make sure that now that I, as an independent planner, was getting out there, that people understood the importance of everything that you just said. It's the relationship building, it's the partnership. It's not just about the check. It's not just about
right,
that additional revenue that can be brought to. It's about all the extra additional revenue that can be brought after for you, the attendees who are getting the benefit, and the sponsor.
yeah,
It's a team effort. It's got to be not just a win-win, but a win-win-win.
yeah.
And it takes some precision, right?
Exactly. I mean, a lot of times, somebody will find me and I'll have kind of an introductory call with a promoter, and you can kind of tell right off the bat. Like, I mean, sometimes the question is, well, how much do you think you can bring in sponsorship?
Right.
Hang on a minute. It's like if that is just the focus, if it's just about money, I want nothing to do with that because it's just going to be a disaster from start to finish.
Yeah.
So it just, and sometimes you need to coach them a little bit about that as well. And then they'll be like, oh, I never thought of it like that. But it really is, it's more than just kind of a one shot deal. And if somebody is thinking in terms of a one shot deal and in terms of just cashing that check so that they can pay for their food and beverage or for whatever else, their AV or whatever else, the bill is coming in at the moment, it doesn't work out as well.
It doesn't. And like you said, you have to have that right, maybe a little bit of coaching. And that's kind of what I do too with my clients, where especially a lot of people who haven't done an event before, or they've done them and they just haven't been successful, are those that kind of
Mhm.
reach out to me the most because that's kind of where I shine a little bit and I have the most fun with. And they'll ask me, hey, I want to have an event. Where do I start? What's the budget? What's it? I'm like, whoa, 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 hold up. Let's start with the first thing first. First things first. What's your why? What's your purpose of having this event to begin with? And that kind of goes back with the sponsors, right? Like you said, when you have
Right.
that introductory call and the first question they ask you is, how much money can I get out of this? No, the question should be, what kind of value and service can I get out of this for my clients? If,
Right.
if they think that mindset, then everything else is going to be just, roses. It's things are going to flow better because the mindset for it and the purpose of it is better.
Yep.
And and again, tying sponsorships to events itself, that's what I try to teach clients too, strategically. And that's where your strategic play comes
Right.
in too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just a one and done thing, right? That one event
Exactly.
that you put all that energy and effort into, if you do it strategically, properly, and plan it well, then it's going to tie into your business over and over and over and over again. And the same thing with the sponsors. If you
Yeah,
treat
and
them
the
as a
sponsors
partner.
aren't used to it either. I mean, a lot of sponsors show up at they're told you're in booth 264. It's down there on the left. Here's
Yep.
your book of what's going to happen, and thanks, good luck, and
Right.
that's it, and it's just a different experience. So it really is important to just kind of create that experience that makes sense for them.
Exactly. Because what's going to happen if they have that, outrageous kind of experience in a good way with you, because you've gone out of, not really gone out of your way, but you've given them a better experience that they normally have received. They are going to then not only want to renew with you again, but they're going to start talking about you in a good way.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
They're going to
Yeah.
tell people, other vendors, hey, are you looking for another spot? I know who you need to call. You need to call Sheila because she
Exactly.
knows how to get you
These
in
guys
front of
travel in packs, they see each other at all these different events, and they're talking
right.
about like what's good and what's bad, and what worked for them, what didn't. And like I've literally had someone call me up that I'm talking to about coming in just to sponsor an event, and they're like, "Well, yeah, I definitely do it, but I also have these four other companies that would be interested as well." I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Cool.
I can look into that if you insist."
Well,
And then it
thank
just
you.
makes my job so much easier. But yeah, it's like, I mean, they do talk to each other, and where there's value there, they will just come back every time. It just makes perfect sense that they would.
Exactly. So again, people listen, experience matters. It takes just one bad thing to have a downhill effect. So if you don't, I mean, I saw this, I won't say what the event was, but I'm walking through, it was a reception happening and there was tons of sponsors and I was there, I was one of the managers of the event. And I'm walking through and I'm like, there's nobody at the booth. All these people are here walking around because it's the networking reception with the sponsors and there's nobody at the booth. What's going on? Right. And then I've got people walking up to me and saying, hey, I want to go talk to so and so, but there's nobody here. Do you know where they are? And I'm like, no. So, I reach out to my sources and I text them. I finally get a hold of who I need to get a hold of. And they're like, oh, Sherry, I didn't know that there was going to be a reception tonight for us. We're already off premises. We can't get there. And I'm like, dude, you're losing
Wow.
out. Now, those of you listening may be saying, well, that's up to the sponsor. They should know, they should have an agenda. And like, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't want to, there's blame to go everywhere, right? It's not, you just don't want to point fingers as it's just the promoter's fault. But the truth of the matter was the sponsor wasn't told. And then when I went back to the person who was supposed to tell them, like, did you not tell them that there was a sponsor? The look on that person's face was like, oh, I didn't know I should. I thought they would. Well, you can't assume.
Yeah.
You know what assume, right? What
Yeah.
assume means. I don't need to say it. But it's like, don't assume that your sponsors know what they need to know to be successful at your event. You need to give them all the information they need to know. Make that experience the best possible experience they can have. Because if they don't, here's what's going to happen. They're not going to want to renew. Your attendees are going to say, people weren't there at the booth, and what they were selling or what they were offering didn't make sense to me. And they're going to talk negatively about their
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
all
And
because we
the
didn't tell them.
attendees are probably going to think they just couldn't be bothered showing up, which is even worse.
Exactly.
You know.
Yes, it's a completely whole negative thing, because I felt so bad for these sponsors that weren't there, because the attendees are looking around saying, well, I don't want to do business with them. So it just was a negative thing that did not need to be there. So, take that extra time, and it's not that, like you said, it's not that difficult. It's a little bit of work up front
Yeah.
to get them all
And
the
honestly, you
information.
can automate it. Like, I mean, you can automate a series of
Right.
emails that are going out, 6 weeks prior to the event with agendas, and this is what you need to know. And when you get to the hotel, this is where you need to pick up your packages. And you can
Exactly.
do all of that pretty easily.
Yep.
Just it takes a little bit of thought and just organization to get it done. But also, like, I always try and get there the night before when they're setting up, so the night before the event, and set up even like definitely get around and speak to everyone. But even if we can
Yes.
set up like a little reception or a dinner or something for them, so here are your fellow sponsors. Let's all go out and grab a bite to eat, and then they get to know each other. It just creates like, and I actually got that from GKSC. We did it at our events for years after GKSC. Remember,
Yeah.
they used to have that um, thing with Dan, and they'd pass the mic around, and everyone
Yeah.
got to introduce themselves, and you saw who
Yeah.
was at the event, and it just set the event up so much better than any other events you go to. That like, you get the first night, you're just kind of in your hotel room because you don't know anyone, and then you go into a room full of strangers the next day. And so just like things like that, just again putting in some thought into it, from their perspective, to
Right.
see how can we make them most comfortable, how can we get them so that the first day of the event they know everyone in the sponsor hall. They maybe even have met some of the attendees, and they're just like rock and rolling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, as you're marketing your event, you're always trying to put, at least you should be, you're always trying to put your mind as what would the attendee like to see?
Hmm.
So do the same thing with your sponsors. If I was a sponsor of this event, what would I like to see? What would I like to have so that I can be as successful at this as possible? You cannot look at it in a way of, you know, I went to them, I told them about the event, I told them about the attendees, told them about the different sponsorship opportunities. They chose it, now it's on them.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's your event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to shift a little bit. Um, and talk about what we're all experiencing right now. The fact that live events, unfortunately, have been kind of put on hold due to COVID-19. And we all know that live events are not going anywhere, but they will be different. Things are going to be looking different post COVID-19. None of us truly know exactly what they're going to look like. We can all hope and pray that it's not going to be that big of a difference. We can all try to guess and plan for it. And we'll talk about that here in a minute, about what you and I think together as, for sponsors, what that looks like. But right now, virtually, that's where a lot of people are kind of shifting, is to the virtual experience, still trying to stay out in front of their industry virtually through, Zoom calls or any other kind of platform that they're doing to do virtual conferences or summits, challenges, you name it. What could you talk about in your experience of what you've been doing with sponsors now, virtually, so that people can kind of understand that there are opportunities out there?
Yeah, so it's all about getting really creative, because you need to be able to still give them that access. So they're not going to be standing at your event where they can, shake hands with people
Yeah.
and meet them and sit down and talk with them and stuff like that. So how can we create that in a virtual environment? So there's a few things we can do. Like, there's a lot of different softwares out there, and I know that you're kind of teaching on software and other places, on this series, but there's ways to kind of set up. Meeting rooms. You can set up appointments, where they can meet with people. They can ask questions. They can have their, the students can have their questions answered. You can do demos, that kind of stuff. So we just have to get really outside the box of like, how can we still give them as much access as you can. Maybe give, like, usually on kind of the sponsor thing, if somebody's going to present on stage, that's really a high price sponsorship because there's a lot of exposure. But
Right.
maybe for this, we need to be able to have them do kind of presentations, um, so that they have, maybe kind of between the speakers, that can jump on and do like a 10, 5 or 10 minute quickie presentation of this is who I am, or interview with the host, something like that, just so that they're getting more of that exposure as well. And then maybe create like special offers that are tied into what the host is doing, so that it's more than just kind of, this is my widget and you can buy it for so many dollars. It's kind of more tied into As part of my program, we're going to take company X and you're going to have 60 days of their program as well tied into it so that it's more of a collaborative type of thing.
Gotcha.
Just and ask them, like, just say what works best for you. What, like, when you are on your own and you've a lead in front of you, what is it like? What is it that gets your lead into your funnel? What is it that makes them progress along? Uh, can we do something like that for our group as well? And just kind of collaborate with them to see what the best way is to get that exposure for them. And then think outside of the event would be my last thing. Is, just, it's not just like for the 48 hours that this summit is going on, or 72 hours or whatever it's going to be, but outside of it, what can we do during the year? Can I do like an endorsed email for you? Can we do a webinar? Can we do ongoing stuff? Maybe a little mini series of, if it's something complicated like a piece of software, maybe it's like a 6-part series of how to get yourself set up in software X,
Hmm.
something like that. But just kind of be creative with it, but bring the sponsor into it as well, because you might come up with like this great idea in your own mind, and you say to the sponsor, we're going to do this for you, and they're like, yeah, but that doesn't actually work for us. You want to really collaborate on that and make sure that everyone's kind of on the same boat. And again, just showing that you're making that kind of effort is going to go a long way to building the relationship.
That's some great information. I don't know how many notes you all are taking, but I got about a page and a half of notes here right now. This is all really, really good information. And some of this, when you think about it, and that's the really cool thing about the relationships in the entrepreneurial industry, is that every single one of us, we have our own specialty and what we're doing, and it allows us to think outside the box in a way that you wouldn't have, right? So what I mean by that is those of you listening to this right now that have had sponsorships in the past, and now you're having to look at it in a whole different way, and you don't know which way to look at it, reach out to Sheila. She knows her stuff. She knows what she's been doing, and not only that, but if you remember how she introduced herself as a strategic planning person, in the marketing industry, that's where she kind of started in business, and then she shifted to sponsors, and she's really, people seek her out for that, and because she's able to think through it strategically, she looks at it in a way that builds partnerships. So it's not about just seeking the money for that one and done thing. It's about building partnerships and relationships that will last, that is even better than just finding that one sponsor for 5 or 10 or $20,000. I mean, you're building relationships where it's a benefit for your company. So you need to look at sponsorships as just another extension of your business and look at them as a partner. So that's really great information, because as a strategic planner myself in events, as I'm writing this, there's lots of light bulbs going off in my head, is, treating the sponsors, like you said, as almost a relationship that you do with speakers in the past,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But so, and I've seen this too, and you gave the answer to this question. You may have a situation where that sponsor isn't really good as a speaker to be able to talk on their own or present on their own, but they're super smart. Well, you gave that answer. Do an interview with them.
Right.
So as the host, you just bring them on and talk just like this naturally and say, Sheila, tell me a little bit about what you do. What are your services like? And then kind of lead them through it, because just because they can't speak as a speaker well from a platform, no matter if it's virtual or live, doesn't mean that they don't have something to offer. So that's really, really good information there. And I think the other natural question that would come up with this is, how do you price something like this? I mean, we have to be realistic in knowing that it's going to be different than it would be live, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be different than it will be live. I think you have to figure out like how you can build value in it. Um, Come up with price. The pricing is probably going to be less than what it is live. I always like to try and build in pricing that it's based on value and it's based on results. So, I've had situations where a sponsor's come in and paid whatever they paid to sponsor something, and they're not happy at the end of the day, it's like you still want to take care of them. Say, okay, so you didn't, what you thought was going to happen didn't happen. And I'm always very realistic about the number of people coming in,
Yeah.
and where they think they're going to be. But there's really no harm in like giving an additional webinar or an endorsed email or something like that, just to make them happy. And I actually kind of thought of something that you had mentioned earlier that I just wanted to circle back on. But you were saying,
Hmm.
if a sponsor is treated badly, it's not good. If
Right.
you all along the way like treat them very well, there's going to be a point where you do mess up, and when you
Yeah.
do, if you have that like prior relationship of I always take care of you, they'll be like, yeah, I know it's a mess up, but we'll figure it out. So they're not angry, they're
Exactly.
just like, can we sort this out? And you do. So it's just, again, just really kind of, really want to collaborate with them. You really want to figure out what it is that's going to work best for them, and brainstorm it together, and then just make it happen.
Exactly. And they may, as talking to the promoters here for a moment, you may not have the ability to think about some options that you could offer to them as value, but the sponsor might have thought of
Mm,
it. They may be able to come to you and say, look, I would love to participate as a sponsor in your virtual summit coming up. And you may say, well, I don't know how to make that happen for you. What do you, just ask the question, what do you think? What would you like to see out of this? And some sponsors may be a little crazy with what they ask, of course, and but that's okay. It's a starting point, right? Well, you might not be able to give them an hour worth of a presentation, but I could probably give you an opportunity to talk with them in a 10-minute break, or something like that. But it's a partnership. Like you said, you just
mhm.
have to collaborate with
Yep.
them and find out. Again, just go back to what we were saying earlier. Think about the win-win-win, right? The win for the sponsor, the win for you as a promoter, and the win for the attendees. You have to remember that a lot of times people forget that that's the whole reason, really, why they're there, right?
Right,
It's
exactly.
not
Yeah.
it's not the experience between the sponsor the one I'm talking about specifically. It's not about the experience between the sponsor and the attendees relationship. It's about the attendees experience with the sponsors. That's different.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that because it'll lead to our next natural question. The experience that I'm talking about with the attendees and the sponsors is giving them the opportunity throughout the event to network with the sponsors. I mean, if you put this out there, like if you're having with your virtual event, if you have sponsors, but they don't have an opportunity to kind of chat with them, like we talked about this a little bit, you can set up rooms and demos and opportunities for them to talk and to meet, even if it's after the virtual event. You've got to open that door. And the same thing at a live event. If you have all these people there, but there's not enough time for the people to get in front of them, then it's a lose-lose. The attendees don't have an opportunity. They have to decide, I want to be in on this session, but I also want to talk to Sheila at her booth. How am I going to do both if I'm not given the opportunity to do so? So can you talk with us a little bit about what you've seen work successfully in the past that was a win-win for those two?
Yeah. So, I mean, fundamentally, and we talked about this earlier, is, the sponsor needs to have the agenda and know when the breaks are, about when the breaks are. They're never when they're
Never the
supposed
same.
to be. But to have that, so they have their staff at the booth ready, and that, it's going to be at 11 o'clock, it's going to get real busy here. By 11:20, they're all going to disappear again. And that's when you should think about having lunch, because by 1 o'clock, they're coming out again. And, so giving them that. A lot of times, if space provided, I try and set up maybe a little seating area close to where the sponsorships are, so that you can walk away from the booth and sit down with somebody if it's a conversation that you want to have. Going back to coaching again, you can kind of set up the sponsor, like the people working the booth, set them up to have kind of someone out front who's just kind of filtering through the people coming to the booth, whether they're legit and a good prospect, or maybe they're just kind of there for the free candy. And then having your more salesperson kind of towards the back of the booth, that you can just filter the people into him that you think are going to be legit. There's a lot of kind of strategic things you can do about that, around that as well. Um, but just kind of the whole positioning of everything to just make sure that you're really because it comes fast and heavy, and then there's like nothing. It's feast and famine.
Right.
So you know you've an empty hallway for like 2 hours, and then all of a sudden there's 1,000 people there, and then they just disappear again. So just to
Exactly.
really kind of figure that piece out. And then just try and set up appointments with them. You don't really want to be pulling them from the event, but at the same time, if they're really interested in what you do, try and do it in the downtime or set up the appointments for the week after. And you know, a lot of times as well, the person who is sponsoring the event isn't the person working in the booth. So you want to make sure that you have some really good people working your booth. I've seen people, and they're literally just kind of
Hmm.
sitting there. Sorry, you don't see the phone in the thing.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
literally just kind of sitting on the
exactly.
phone, sitting on their computer, eating food, which just really irritates me at the booth. And it's just like it's just unappealing. You just don't want to go over and disturb them.
Yeah,
So, you know, you gotta make hay when the sun shines, and they just need to be on when they need to be on. And I've literally gone back to sponsors and said, you know, the event didn't work out great. I know you're not happy with it, but I gotta give you some honest feedback about your people who are there, you know,
right.
and let them know because they don't know. They're paying them a fortune to be there, and they're just, you know, oh hey, it's Miami. I'm going to go out drinking all night and not show up the next day because I'm hungover. You
No,
know?
I know. I'm amazed half the time I see that happen, where it's like,
Yeah,
dude, you don't
yeah,
look well. Are you okay? Oh, I
yeah.
was
So
out late last
literally,
night. And they try to claim that they were out late last night with clients and such. I'm
yeah,
like, still, dude, that's not
yeah,
professional.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that,
it's just, I mean,
yeah.
it's like you have a short window of time there. So, and this
Right.
kind of goes back to coaching your sponsors as well. I had somebody actually give me an idea of setting up like a coaching program, a 6 week coaching program for the people in the booths before the event to
Mm,
really kind of go through and, you know, what's the quickest way, what's the most efficient way to kind of get as many, talk to as many people and filter out kind of the people who maybe aren't going to be a good fit very quickly, and just kind of, you know, so you really kind of win at the event.
that's awesome. Is that something that you are putting together?
I haven't put it together yet. I've thought about it. I'm not exactly sure if it's you know, I'm not sure if that's where I want to go or not, but we'll see.
Well, that would be awesome. Those of you listening right now, if you think that having that kind of information, whether it's the time with Sheila, who knows her stuff, or maybe something that she could put together to offer you, and that would be something you'd be interested in, I'd love for you to leave your comments here below the video and say, yes, Sheila, I
Definitely.
want that. Raise your hand and say, I want that. I would
Yeah,
invest my time, my money into something like that because I want to know how I can have the most success at my booth. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to hear from you so that I can relay that to Sheila because,
that's
I
amazing.
understand
Yeah,
her.
I'll build it if there is interest in it, I will certainly build it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, me looking at it as an event planner standpoint, I definitely think it's something that's needed. But like you said, you want to give what's needed. So this is a great way for us to put that sort of survey out there is
Mhm.
those listening to this, if you think it would be beneficial for you to have some sort of coaching program, whatever that looks like, Sheila can figure that out. But if you say yes, put yes in the comments here, and I will give that information to Sheila because she's got a big serving heart, and if she knows that there's a need out there for this, then she'll put the energy and effort into getting it out there for you. That's great because I definitely think it's important.
Awesome.
Yeah, because you've got really great information. Here's a question I'm going to throw out there for you.
Yeah.
I have people ask me this all the time, and you'll probably laugh because we've had a handful of people like that in the old GKIC days, and I still see it at big events like TNC and such. Is it worth, in your professional opinion, to hire and spend your money to have someone else at your booth to draw attention to your booth?
Like the booth babes.
The booth babes,
Yeah.
or celebrity, or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's I think it might be worth it to kind of draw attention a little bit. I think ultimately though, you're drawing attention for the wrong reason. So then
Exactly.
you have to convert them over to actually, you know, I have this like really complicated software that, you know, it's very
Right.
boring, but I'm glad that you're over here now. I'm going to tell you about it. You know?
Exactly.
So I think really the call to action from afar, so like on a big poster or something, has to be the problem that you're experiencing right now, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's the solution. So I would rather see people focus on that and focus on putting more money behind that than to try and just like draw people over for the wrong reason. I mean, it's, people do it and it's funny and all the rest of it, but honestly, it's like I don't know if it's ultimately at the end of the day, and it's going to be a turn off for some people as well. So
It will, because it draws attention for the wrong reasons. And I think
right,
for, my argument, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think my argument with that too would be, look, if you have the money to invest in something like that, why don't you reach out to the promoter and see if there's a break or a reception or a lunch or something that you can sponsor to where
right,
you
yeah,
actually have the attention for the
yes,
right reasons at
yeah,
that point.
yeah.
Or if you
Even
want
get
to,
a bigger space and stage it up where you can have consultancies,
exactly.
so people can sit
Yes.
down with you for 15 minutes and consult on whatever it is, and you bring them value, and who knows where that's going to lead to,
Right. Spend the few extra thousand or whatever on a
Yeah,
bigger booth, or, have, it, like you said, a seating area, something where you can draw the people out of the walkway
yeah,
into your booth and be able to set aside with them and chat with them, maybe over, a cup of coffee or a snack or something like that,
right, yeah.
instead of a person who is half dressed or a celebrity where the attention is being taken off of you and your service.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, unless it's really tied to your brand, which, it's going to be a hard argument
exactly.
that that is tied to
Yeah.
your brand.
Yeah.
Unless it is, I think
Well,
you need
I've
to
seen
something
those
else.
things. Yeah. I've seen, uh, I don't know. I think it was a TNC, and I also saw it at Funnel Hacking, where one of the sponsors, I don't, and this is funny because this is what's important. I don't remember the full name of the company and I don't know what they do, but I remember them because the person was dressed up as a pickle and they were riding around on a cart with pickles in it and giving away pickles because the company's name had pickle in it.
Design pickle, probably.
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's funny, but, you know, in my opinion, as a strategic planner on that part, is I would have gone a little bit deeper in that and saying, if, the reason I'm dressed like this is because I can design cool things like this for your business,
yeah,
something along those lines, so that
yeah,
it
yeah.
makes sense to the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about like taking that money into designing something? So having a little workshop where you can come over and design your own logo or your own whatever it is that like there's a lot to be said from walking away from an event with something actually done and achieved.
Right.
So I wrote this. I have 5 emails that I learned how to write, or I have something that I'm coming home that I can now implement. Versus I have a picture of me in a pickle. You know.
Exactly. Exactly. Now that's
Yeah.
great information. That's another gold nugget, Sheila. Yeah. It's like, they're walking away with, I mean, I would rather that.
Yeah,
If I'm not understanding truly if I walk up to your booth, and I've done this over and over and over again, I'm walking past booths and I'm like, I don't really understand what you do. And the
yeah,
person, like you said, is sitting here on their phone, and I'm
right.
walking up to the booth and I'm looking, and they don't even
They don't even see you.
engage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and all you have at your booth is pop-up banners and literature with a person not even engaging.
yeah.
You've lost out on
And who
so
knows?
much.
You could have this could be your number one problem in your business that they can solve, and
Right.
you guys never connect, and you never
Never
know.
connect. Right.
You
Because
know.
I don't know what problem you're going to solve for me based on the literature you have. Yeah. I mean, this is all great information. And I think what I would love to do, because I know we're starting to run out of time here, I don't want to take advantage of your time, is I think if it's okay by you, I would love to have you back again and talk quite a bit more in depth about that, because
I
it's,
would love to, yeah. And
yeah,
if you want to put it out in a survey as well, because it was hard. This was great, but it was broad, so it
yes,
was hard to kind of like and we kind of went down a couple of rabbit holes, which I'm glad we did. But it was
yeah,
hard to do that. Like I would love to go into detail on certain things if people are looking for that, and I'm all about the 4-step process and do this, then this, then this. So I would love to do that for your audience
I
if
would love to do that
they're
too.
interested. So poll them and see what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that, because I think you have, you've got such an awesome business mind when it comes to what works best with sponsors and the partnerships. And as we're looking post COVID-19, we didn't even get a chance to really truly talk about that.
Right.
Like you said, we did go down a couple rabbit holes, and it's probably a little bit my fault because it's like, oh, let's talk about this, let's talk about that.
I
Um,
think it's beneficial though, and I think your
yeah,
listeners are going to be happy with where we went.
I
So
think so too, because it kind
yeah,
of, like you said, it was a really broad range of many different areas that we touched a little bit on, the beginner portion, the people who've been doing it for a while, or those that they don't know what to do now. We talked a little bit about all of those areas, but yes, just like Sheila said, if you would, and you're listening to this and you would like us to get back together again and talk specifically, right, about a certain area in regards to sponsorships, the outlook from the sponsor's point of view, how can I be a better sponsor? Or the outlook from a promoter's point of view of how can I obtain more sponsors? That kind of thing, let us be a little bit more specific. And I'll think about it myself. I'll think about, as we talk through this, I'll go back through the interview. I've taken lots of notes, and I may reach directly out to Sheila myself and say, hey, let's talk specifically more about this. She may even have some more information too, because, she's a lot like me where we're consistently having our ear to the door of what's happening, what's going to be happening, what's the future look like. So I will definitely have Sheila back. And if you would like it to be live, because I'm starting to tiptoe in that direction, where it gives an opportunity for people to ask questions live during this. If this is something that you are interested in, please let me know that too, because it's a very good topic. Sponsorships, I think, for so long is overlooked. It's an area that's overlooked. And when it is looked at, it's not looked at it in a partnership way. And I think that's where people need to shift their mind on this, because right now we are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together. And I think using sponsorships in a new way of thinking as a partner is the way to do that. So Sheila, thank you again for your
oh, you're
time.
welcome. This was awesome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. I had a lot of fun with this. This was fun.
Good. I did too. And like you said, we could have went down so many different rabbit holes and focused more on but I will do and reach back out to you, and we'll specifically talk about one kind of topic, and
Yep.
maybe even have an opportunity for Sheila, if she's open to it, to teach a little bit more
Yeah, I
about
would
it.
love to. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
even, dive deep into something, do like a little mini series for people or something, and just give it to your people.
Yeah,
If it
yeah,
helps
we'll
them,
we'll
why
definitely
not?
talk about that. Yeah, I would love that. So again, thank you again, Sheila. This is Sherry with the Strategic Event Planner of SLS Event Planning, talking with Sheila again today about sponsorships and how to make them a partner with you. They're just looking at them as a partnership and not just another revenue opportunity for you. And what does that look like now and into the future? We talked a little bit about that today. There are so many golden nuggets. I have 2 pages worth of information here where we talked about partnering with them, figuring out who they are before you even start reaching out to them. We talked about the right experience for your attendees. We talked about collaborating with them right now in a way that works best for both of you so that you could do something virtually together. And she gave a lot of great information for sponsors themselves on tips on how to make your experience at live events and virtually the best that it could possibly be. So thank you again so much for tuning in, and stay safe and stay in touch.